So today we're going to talk to you about, well, I'm going to talk to you about drone photos, how you can maximize these little bad boys in the sky, tips and tricks on settings, and how you can get the best results on your next drone trip. So let's hit it. Smile, my friend, you're on camera. There's nothing cooler for photographers and videographers than being able to pop up a drone in the air to capture unique footage and video or cinematography of your subject. The best way to get your best results is to make sure you're planned on the ground before you go up in the air. There's nothing worse than taking off and realizing, well, I have to be able to change my settings now up in the air. I don't have the correct ND filter on. Am I shooting with a polarizer or not? And waste battery time as I'm flying around. On these batteries that only have about, in this case with the Mavic 2 Pro, about 25 minutes of flight time. Now I always make sure that my ISO is set at 100. Now this can be for a sunny day or even a cloudy day, which I'm sure there are pundits out there who might disagree, but I find anything over ISO 200 tends to kind of get a little grainy and noisy. So why not make sure you have your ISO set properly and of course use the ND filters to adjust. As a result of this, and because I have an ND filter on the drone, I usually shoot at about f2.8 to f4 for a sunny day to begin my shoots. And speaking of ND filters, you just have to have them. They're like sunglasses for your drone. I mean, you wouldn't go walking outdoors yourself on a sunny day without sunglasses on, so of course with any kind of camera or lens, having that ND filter allows you to ensure that your footage is not blown out. I use the Polar Pro series. Now, these ND filters are, in my mind, the best you can get for the Mavic 2 Pro. Of course, they make them for the Mavic series, the original, the OG, the Mavic Air, the Mavic Air 2. They make it for the a whole host of DJI products. In this case, my two little kits that I have here have both ND 4, 8, and 16 in normal ND as well as in polarizing NDs. Now, polarizing NDs, really super important. If you're shooting above water and it has a lot of glare in the environment, a polarizing filter allows you to cut through that glare and get clarity. Also, a golden hour, if you're flying over a watery surface, you can cut through that glare to see what's underneath. In this photo right here, you can tell there is something definitely under the water as a result of having that, I believe it was ND8, that was a polarized filter because it cut through the glare of the sun to show you what was under the water. As with every camera, definitely shoot in your manual settings mode. It gives you full control over white balance and over your shutter speed. And speaking of your shutter speed, definitely have it set to 1/100th when you take off on a sunny or cloudy day. Now, of course, you can turn down that shutter speed to make it slower if you want to capture some cool things like waterfalls, if you want to capture a moving object like cars, for example, or trains. Of course, capturing that safely and within distance of 30 meters, but having movement, if you lower your shutter speed, you can develop that lovely light line of streak that you get as long as the drone is stabilized. Now, you do have to practice this a bit and also shoot on a non-windy day, but it can be done on a lower shutter speed. Now, in terms of the balance of my camera settings, I always love to shoot at +1, -1, and -1. So I usually do +1 to sharpness, -1 to contrast, and -1 to saturation. This gives me the most flexibility in post to be able to get a good crisp starting point for my image. Woo, my hair is getting long. And also for picture format, I like to make sure I shoot everything at a 3:2 for my photos. It's a little different than 16:9 obviously for video, but 3:2 gives you the widest element of view for your photos and you're not cropping in when you take that shot. And in terms of file settings, I love to shoot both in JPEG as well as in RAW. If I'm feeling more adventurous and want to have the ability of being able to have full access to that idea of color grading, that RAW photo gives the most ability of being able to have a flat image that you can manipulate in post-production. Of course, doing it in JPEG still gives you a very good ability to be able to manipulate colors as well as tones and saturations. It gives you a very good image right off the bat. So having those two images, depending upon the mood you're in and depending upon how detailed you have to get into your photo, can really help. And one of the easiest things you can do for your photo, just leave the white balance on auto, as it's a still, it's not a video. One of the things the Mavic Pro 2 cannot do is it can't have the camera go sideways like you had on the original Mavic Pro. Now the Mavic Pro could change that gimbal to give you that ability of being able to get that vertical shot that we all love for Instagram and for social media. Unfortunately, in this case, you can't do it. However, there is something you can do in post-production, well, doing it before post-production so you have the photos to work with, but you can get that vertical effect by doing this nifty trick. Now, if you take 3 shots of the bottom section, the middle section, and the top section, you can bring it into Lightroom and you can stitch all 3 together together into a long vertical option to give a bigger sense of field of shot. So one more thing you can also try is using the auto exposure bracketing idea of being able to get your shots. What this essentially does is it takes 3 quick shots in succession of an underexposed, a properly exposed, and an overexposed image, which then you can also take into Lightroom and you can merge them together or stitch them together to create a more dynamic range. Essentially, this creates an HDR photo for you without having to shoot in HDR mode. I like this personally because it gives a bit more flexibility for pushing and pulling even more and gives you a bit more dynamic range. So one of the best tricks I've learned through my photo taking process is that knowing that Google Maps or Apple Maps, anything that has essentially a 3D map function is your best friend before you plan your shoot. Hop on and take a look on that map to see unique perspectives of the topography before you begin your shoot. It'll save you time from traveling out there. You'll know what to basically expect. And also it gives you the idea of what's in proximity in terms of buildings, of course for safety and legal purposes. Now, of course, repeat after me, don't fly when it's windy, because that's just a bad idea. You risk losing your bird, the footage is going to be shaky, you might get water on the lens, you might get water on your ND filter. Just nothing good came out of flying on a windy, rainy, yucky day. And last, but certainly not least, think 360 in terms of spatial awareness when you're shooting your shots. If you're shooting forward, think about capturing a photo from top down. If you're thinking top down, think of a shot forward. Think left, think right, think turning your drone around when you only had the idea of that front-facing shot, because there might be something wild right behind you that you never planned on getting. When you think about your full environment, you definitely maximize the potential to capture every detail in the area that you're shooting. So I hope these tips and tricks on drone aerial photography help you achieve the aerial shots that you're looking for. They've been tried and true tested methods that I've used every time I've gone out to do drone photography, and definitely they help you plan your shot to maximize your time and maximize the drone's ability when it's up in the air. And please hit that like and subscribe button below so you can stay up to date on all the content we have coming out on drones and photography, videography, and ideas on how you can get the shot you want on the budget that you got. So until next time, take a drone outdoors and take some photos. You might be surprised with the results.